Before we start working with custom controller, we have to understand a few basics. First thing that you have to understand is Visual Force is a markup language. What is Visual Force? It's a markup language. Markup language means it can be used for defining markups. So primarily it can be used for designing pages. Right. So we have seen in Visual Force, what do we have? We have the components, tags. With components and tags, you can define the design and the components that you want to include in the page, but you cannot write logics, you cannot write conditions, you cannot write if else there, you cannot do loops there. Got it? So Visual Force is not sufficient for you to write your own logics. You cannot use Visual Force to write logics because it's a very, very simple, what do you call it? A designing kind of an application or software framework, right? Which can be used for designing the interface, but it does not understand logics that much, or it does not allow you to define the logics, right? So there is not much scope for you to define the logics. Then what do you do then? How do you define the logics? For defining logics, you have to use another language which is called Apex. Okay. So for writing your logics, you have to use another language which is Apex. Apex is the other programming language which we are gonna use, right? Now, to use Apex, first of all, we'll have to understand a few basics of Apex, understand a few, a little bit of syntax. Apex is a proper programming language, a full-fledged programming language, where you can do the communication with the system properly. Okay. So let's understand a bit about Apex, and then we will use Apex to create the third type of controller, which is a custom controller. Right? So let's understand the basics of Apex. Okay. So what is Apex? As I just told you, Apex is a strongly typed object-oriented programming language. What is this strongly typed programming language? We understand. What is strongly typed? Anyone? Any ideas? What's a strongly typed programming language? And what is a loosely typed programming language? Anyone? Any ideas on this? No? Okay. When you're writing a programming language, you will use variables. In programming language, variables are used. We all understand what's a variable, right? So variable is basically something which can hold different values. Okay. So whenever you are defining a variable in a programming language, let's say you're defining a variable x in a programming language. Okay. There are two approaches. Some programming languages allow you to define a variable. Okay. And this variable can hold any type of value. It can hold text, it can hold number, it can hold date, it can hold time. Okay. So some programming languages have that kind of a concept. Those programming languages are loosely typed programming languages. Some programming languages want you to define the data type of this variable also. But okay. If it is string, you define that it is a string. And then this variable can only hold string. You cannot put a number into the string. Correct? So that is called a strongly typed programming language. Clear? In strongly typed programming language, you don't have the sorry, you have to define the variable data type always. Before you define the variable, you'll have to say what is the data type of that variable. Fine. So the rules and restrictions are pretty strong. Before you use a variable, before you bring in the name of the variable, it asks you why do you need that variable? What are you going to store there? Okay. But in a loosely typed programming language, that's not the concept. Okay. So Apex is a strongly typed programming language that allows developers to execute flow and transaction control statements. Okay, which allows the developers to execute the flow and transaction control statements on the Force.com platform. Now, Apex is a language which is native to the Force.com platform. So basically, you cannot go and use Apex anywhere else in the world. It can only be used on the Force.com platform. It's a native language on Force.com platform. Apex enables developers to add business logic to most of the system events, including button clicks, related record updates, Visual Force pages. So why would we need Apex? Why do we need the help of Apex? We need the help of Apex to write logics to the system events. What kind of system events? Something like a button click, something like a record update, something like a Visual Force page. So on these things you need help of Apex. Alright. Okay. Now comes the data types. So since I said that every time you're defining a variable using Apex, you have to define the data type. So it's important for you to understand the data types. Let's understand data types. In Apex, all variables and expression must have a data type that is one of the following. So one of these following data types needs to be defined. Okay. So Apex has three data types primarily, and after that, every data type has its own data types again. So one is primitives, S objects, collections. Okay. So your data types will fall under one of these categories, either primitive, S object, or collection. Okay. Now let's understand one by one what is primitive. Primitives are the data types which you might have seen in other programming languages also, and primitives are basically used for storing single values, right? Like name of the company, revenue that you got from the company, or the size of the deal, number of employees in the company. These are all single values, right? Whether the company is a client or not. So it's a true false kind of situation. So single value, correct? These are primitive data types where you are storing single values, and these primitive data types are very common. You might have seen in other programming also. Okay. So Apex primitive data types include Boolean. Boolean is a data type which can hold true, false, or null. It cannot hold any other value. It can hold only true, false, or null. Decimal is a data type which can hold a number with a decimal point. Double, it can hold a 64-bit number with a decimal point. ID is a data type which can hold a Salesforce.com record ID. Remember the ID we were taking in the standard controller? We're dealing with ID. That ID. Integer, a 32-bit number that does not include a decimal point. Long, a 64-bit number that does not include a decimal point. String, any set of characters surrounded by single quotes. So string is any set of characters which is surrounded by single quotes. Date, we know, date time we know, time we know, right? So these are the primitive data types. So if you are dealing with single value, you'll have to define that whether your value is a string or an integer or it's the ID of a record, it's a boolean which can hold only true or false. Clear? Okay. So now a quick round of questions. I want to define a variable which will hold name of the month. What should that variable be? What should be the data type of that variable? My variable will hold name of the month. What data type should I use? Quick.
The string,
Are you sure?
there's a date of month name, right?
It's a name of the month, so it has to be string. Okay. I want to define a variable for Number of days in a month. What should be that variable?
Integer.
Number of days in a month is going to be integer. Very good. Okay. I want to. Yeah. Microphones mute, please. Yeah. Now I want to define a variable to specify whether a month has whether a specified month has 30 days or not. Yes or no. Yes or no kind of. It will be the variable.
Boolean.
Sudhir, can you mute your microphone, please? There's a lot of background noise.
Boolean.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay. Microphone mute, please. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, man, but there was too much of background noise. Okay. Yeah. So, yes or no kind of a situation, true false kind of a situation, it's going to be boolean, right? So now we have got the basics right. Now let me ask you a question. If I want a variable where I can, because I'm working on Salesforce, I'm dealing with records, I want a variable for full account record. Now what will be your data type? Sometimes I will need to define records also into variables, right? I will need to define variables for which can hold a full record, full account record, let's say, or full contact record. Then what will be your data type?
Long.
Why? How come you come to long? Just because of the name, but long is a
No,
number,
no.
64-bit number. Okay, so now there is a small concept that we have to understand here. A record, when I am talking about a record, a complete account record or a contact record or any other record, it has multiple values, right? So account record, for example, has a name, has a website, has a number of employees, it has a phone number, fax number, type, industry, last created date. So it's basically not just one value, it is complete record, right? So none of the primitives is actually gonna resolve your issue here. So for that you need another data type, which is S object. Okay. S object is basically defined for Salesforce object. It stands for Salesforce object. Okay. And Salesforce has made our lives easy by giving us this S object variable. S object variable is very simple. Whenever you need to define a variable for a record, you can use that object as the data type. For example, you want to define a variable for account record, you can use account object as the data type. Right? So whichever object record you want to actually put in your variable, the data type should be the name of the object. That's it. Okay. So the objects, the Salesforce objects are also data types. The term S object refers to any object that can be stored in the Force.com platform database. So S object basically refers to Salesforce object. An S object variable represents a row of data and can only be declared in index. So this S object variable basically represents a row of data, complete row of data. So let's understand. If I say string X, what can I store in this? I can only store set of characters. Okay. Any string, hello, how are you, something like this. If you need a variable for full record, account record, then you can define it like this, account A. If you need a variable for contact record, you can define it as simple as contact C. If you need a variable for opportunity record, you can define it as opportunity O. Right? Are we clear on this? How we are defining it? So we can define it as simple as this. Account A, contact C, opportunity O, things like this. Right? Now, and you can define any Salesforce object as a data type. That data type will be used for defining a record, a variable for the full row of data from that object. So let's understand the syntax a little more. Let's say you write account A equals name, account name. I said it's going to be a full row of data. So those values can be put here. History equals technology. Account equals client. Something like this. Alright. The same way, contact C equals new contact, first name equals G. Fine. So this is how you can actually define the variables which can hold a full row of data. In that row of data, there will be multiple values, or this is how you can actually define. Clear? Now this is where I have defined a new record, new account record, and I have assigned value for the fields. Correct? You can alternatively, you can also define an subject variable which can get its value from the database. Like account A equals, you can write a query here to fetch the value from the database. Select name, type, industry, from account where name equals IBM. Okay. So that's how it is. So we can define our subject variables like this. Okay. Either you define the values on your own or you retrieve the value from the database, whichever way. Okay. So are we clear with the subject thing? Primitive is pretty simple. The subject is clear with everyone. Let me know if there is any difficulty understanding a subject. We're defining it. This object variable basically is used for holding a complete row of information.
So, G, this is going to be the Apex language, the way we define the objects.
A subject variable. This is a variable. This is not an object complete. This is just a variable.
Okay.
No, I do not know if that answered your question. So you repeat your question. What exactly you were asking?
Like when you said the Apex language, right? The language, the programming language Is this the format? Is this the syntax? Like, or is it
Before,
only the variables what you're defining?
okay, before I answer that, have you done any programming earlier? I'll reply like that only, if you understand programming or not. So have you done programming earlier? Any other programming language?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
A little, I mean, SQL, that's it.
SQL, okay. C, C++ kind of thing you have never done, right?
No, no.
Okay. So for you and for others also, the point is that whenever you are writing a programming language, sorry, a program, basically, we deal with a lot of variables. Why do we deal with variables? Because every logic, everything depends on variables. Correct? If the value of the variable is this, then do this. If the value of the variable is this, then do this. Right? So for that reason, we will need to write variables. What we are learning now here is how do we define those variables with different data types. Okay? So that's basically what we are doing, and this is how it's written in Apex programming language. Fine. I hope that that answers the question. Okay, Venkat?
Yes, yes, Jeet. Yeah.
Fine. So this is how we are actually going to define variables. Now, how are we going to use these variables? That's something which we will do in our next session. Today we are just learning how to define variables. So every time you are defining a variable, as I said, strongly typed language, every time you define a variable, first of all, you'll have to specify what data you are going to store. So it's a very Apex programming is something where you clearly need to define that what are you going to use that variable for, what data are you going to store there. So you can have different requirements. Sometimes you're trying to store just a text, then you can use a string. Sometimes you're just trying to use a number, then you can use an integer. Sometimes you're trying to use a variable to store a complete record. Okay, we are trying to define a variable which can hold a complete record. That's where NS object variable will be used. Got it? Clear with everyone? Any questions on this? No? Good. Okay. Now, then we come into collection. Okay. What's a collection? Collection is basically a variable which can hold multiple values. Okay. So in collection we have list and we have set. What is a list? List is an ordered collection of S objects or primitives. Okay. Forget about this part. It's leave it for now. Just think of a list as an ordered collection and set is an unordered collection. List is an ordered collection, set is an unordered collection. Okay, so I'll talk about list first. So for example, I say string color equals red. So what is my data type? String. What is the name of the variable? Color. What is the value? Red. Right. Now this is a variable which can hold only one value. Okay. Currently, color is a variable which can hold only one value. But if I want to store multiple values inside uh, my variable, then you will use a list. How do you define a list? This is how it is. List of string, name it anything. So this variable name again can be anything, ABCD, XYZ, whatever you want. So list of string, you name it anything. And list of string red, green, blue, purple. Fine, because this is a list of string, the data type is actually list. This can hold multiple values inside it. So not just one color, okay? So difference between this and this is a variable which can hold multiple values, this is a variable which can hold only one value. Clear? If you want to, once you have defined this, if you want to add more values to the same variable, you can also say colors dot add black. What do you think this line is going to do? Just look into it and tell me, what do you think this last line is going to do?
It's going to add black color as well to the list.
Yes, it's going to add black color as well to the list. Fine. So that's it. I mean, once you have defined the list, after that, if you want to put one or few more values, what would you do that? Same way. Okay. So this is the list of values. Now, when I talk about list, I have defined here list is an ordered collection. What does that mean? Ordered collection. Why I am talking about ordered collection? Ordered collection means every value that gets into a list variable, multiple values are allowed. Every value which gets into it has an index number. Every value which gets into the list has an index number, starting from index 0, which means this will have index 0, this will have index 1, this will have index 2, this will have index number 3, this will have black will have index 4. Okay, does that make any difference to the functionality of it? Yes, it does. Basically, why do you think index numbers are being given here? Index numbers are being assigned to every value so that the index number becomes the identifier of that value. Try and understand this. Take a simple example. When you join a company, the company has your name on the offer letter, but they assign an employee ID to you. What is the logic? Why do they assign an employee ID? You already have a name, but they are assigning you an employee ID. What is the logic behind that? Anyone?
That's going to be
Uh,
the primary ID, yeah.
Primary
yeah, it's
ID.
kind of an identifier.
It becomes your identifier, right? Because there can be two
Yeah,
people with the same name, so
right.
that becomes identifier. It's easy to fetch the value from the ID. Okay. The same thing happens in case of a list. The index number is the identifier. The value itself is not. Value is just a value, but identifier is the index number for that value. So if you have to fetch this red value, you should go and say colors dot get 0. So when I say colors dot get 0, it's actually going to fetch the value from the 0 index number. If I say index dot get 2, what do you think it's going to return? What value will it return?
Blue.
Blue. Got it? So that's how it is. Now, there's a small thing which you have to understand inside this. Since it is, assigning an index number to all the values, and since the records are being identified by the index number, which means the index number is the primary key now. The other small thing that we have to understand here is that now you uh, list will allow duplicate values because the value itself is not the identifier. Got it? Because identifier is something else. which means duplicate values will be allowed. Clear? The same concept, your office concept again. The company is allowing you, giving you employee IDs, and the name cannot be made unique IDs because the company has the scope of hiring two people with the same name. The same is applicable here also. The list has the scope of allowing two different uh, values which are actually same. So basically, if I go here and say colors dot add red, if I do this now, red is also going to get added to the list, though red is already existing. Okay, but the difference between this red and this red is this is at index 0, and whereas this is going to be at index 5. Clear? So a list, basically the full crux of the story is that a list will allow the duplicate values, and it can allow duplicate values. It does not have any problem with this red and this red because it has different identifier. The identifier is the index number. Index number is definitely different between these two values. Whenever you are trying to retrieve a value from a list, you are using the index number. As simple as that. Let me know if anyone has a question here. Are we clear on this? The
If
index
the
number
list
problem?
doesn't have an identifier, Jeet,
It will have. I mean, you don't have to define it. The moment you say list, by default, the program is structured like that. It will not even show you the index number.
okay,
You will, these are just hidden index numbers. You just see red, green, blue, these things. Okay. But it automatically assigns the index numbers to those. Correct? The
okay.
way Salesforce, you create a record and it automatically assigns an ID to it, the same thing. Alright. So a list.
Jeet, one question.
Yeah, just one second. Let me just finish this part. So
Sure.
the basic
Yeah.
point is that a list can hold duplicate values. So a list is a collection, an ordered collection. So there are two, functionalities or two functions of a list basically, which we can understand from here. One, it's going to allow duplicate values. Secondly, it is going to take the values in a certain order, which means whenever you are trying to retrieve it, you will have the option of retrieving the value based on the index number, the value which got went into it first, the value which went into it second, in that case. So that option is also available. Got it? Yeah. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah. Basically, on the colors dot add red,
Hmm.
um, the index number 0 and index number 5.
Hmm.
How does the system differentiate between the two reds?
By the index number.
Yeah, but when suppose for future when you are using these red again, so which red will it consider? 0 index number or 5 index number?
See, it has
Because
got
you'll
into
keep on
that.
using it.
So it's like you have
Sorry?
put, see, it's like you have put the value inside the variable, right? Now, when you're trying to retrieve it,
Mm, mm.
what will it return?
It'll return red or yeah, red. Yeah.
One
Okay.
index number
That
will
way.
have one value only.
Okay, okay.
This will also return red.
Yeah. So when you write in the program, you give the index number and it will automatically do that.
Right.
Okay.
Fine.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. So now when we have this concept of including duplicate values, because sometimes you will have the requirement, right? For example, I'll give you another simple example which all of you can relate to. I tell you that create a list of all the World Cup, cricket World Cup winning teams, countries. Okay. So the first World Cup should be, the first instance, and after that, I want you to give me the complete list. Now, there's a possibility that there are different there are some countries which will appear in the list twice, thrice, correct? So there are certain requirements where you have to allow the duplicate values. There are certain such situations where you have to allow the duplicate values. Okay, you are trying to pull a list of the salesperson, for example, in your company. Again, let me give you some example related to Salesforce. You are trying to pull out the list of users who did maximum deals in last 12 months. 2015, starting from January till December, who was the person who did maximum deals? There is a possibility that person who did maximum deals in January also did maximum deals in April, right? And when I try to display the list, the name of that person should appear twice, correct? This is a kind of list where you need to, this is a kind of collection where you need to allow duplicate values because that's the requirement. Clear? So list actually helps you achieve these kind of requirements. Okay. Now, the second thing which comes into mind is, okay, we are okay with allowing duplicate values. What do we do if you don't want to allow duplicate values? Sometimes you will have the requirement the other way around. You don't want to allow duplicate values. You say if there is one red, don't allow another red. That can be a situation. That's where you deal with a set. Set is an unordered collection. So if you say a set of string, whatever name you want to give it, set of string, call it weak face, let's say. New set string. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Right? Oh, is my voice breaking? Is it something that everyone else is facing?
I think it's good for me.
Huh? Good. Okay.
Yeah,
How about others?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. So I think this is some problem on Shashi's side. Shashi, it seems it's fine with most of them. I think you just have to check your connection set. All right. Okay. So, okay. What happens here is, in case of a set, it only, there is no index number concept. The value is identified by the actual value. So Monday is the identifier, which means if you try to do this, weekdays dot add one more Monday here, nothing will happen because Monday is already existing. Got it? So that's a set. Let me know if there is any difficulty understanding a list and set. The list concept is, you know, basically designed to include the duplicate values, and that's the reason why every value has an index number. Set concept is designed to not include duplicate values, and that's the reason why there is no index number concept. One value which has got entered into the data into the list once will not be repeated. Okay. You try to enter it second time, it will not take it. It will just ignore it. It sees Monday is already existing, it will just skip that part. Okay. So depending on our requirement, we are actually going to choose a list or a set. Okay. One more small thing, this list of string can also be defined as just a small syntax. List of string can also be defined as fully equal to this. Okay. So this and this means exactly the same. There is no difference. This and this are same. Okay. Why I'm telling you about this, because sometimes some people use this syntax, some people use this syntax. So in some programming you might find this syntax. So don't get worried. It's just a list. Nothing else. Okay. Okay, so we'll talk a little more, we'll see the data types in action when we start writing some examples. You guys will be able to understand that. For now, defining data types and variables, is that fine? Do we understand primitives as objects, list and set? If there is any question, please let me know. We are clear?
One question, Jeet.
Please.
One quick question.
Yeah.
This is between list and set.
Hmm.
Okay. Suppose you're writing a program and so if you have a set of values and you start writing a program with list, and later on you realize the values do not have any duplicate values, so you can change it to set, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
So
your
basically
program.
when yeah so basically while using the command, you're not aware whether you'll use list or you'll use set,
Hmm.
right? So it doesn't make a difference, right? You don't have to know the values, you can always make a
No, no,
change.
you don't have to see. The person who is running the command will not know that.
Yeah.
Right? Only the person who is writing the program will know that. So the person who is writing the program will have to understand what is the requirement of the end user, right?
Okay.
So now, uh, when you are using Salesforce and
Yeah.
when you actually try to, see a list of records there, do you know whether they have defined list or set in the backend? You don't even know. I mean,
Okay.
that's what I'm trying to tell you. Now you will start knowing
Yeah.
since you are getting into Epic's programming. But Salesforce end
Mhm.
users do not have any clue on what actually is happening. That's up to the programmer to decide. So we as programmers will know. End user does not have to know all those things. Correct?
Okay.
Okay. Now, uh, so variables we have understood, right? There are a couple of more concepts which I'm going to talk. So once we have understood about variables, there is another thing that we have to understand, that the variables cannot do anything. Variable is just like it's just a character. It's just a in a movie you see an actor. So variable is just like an actor. Okay. So what that variable is going to do is something which we have to instruct to the program. Defining variable itself is not going to do. If I say string a equals look. Now what? This is not an instruction. This is just defining a variable, right? Now there can be a complete program around this variable, that if the variable value is hello, then do this, and the variable value is this, then do this, something like that, right? Those instructions are to be defined in methods. So apart from variables, there are methods. Okay. So the instructions are written in methods. Method is where you are actually going to instruct what you want to do with the variable. If you want to compare something, if you want to do something, if you want to execute something, if you want to delete something, that needs to be written in a method. And otherwise, variable is just a variable. It's just one innocent guy. He does not know what to do, right? So methods will basically have the instructions. So let's take a small example. Let's say I have two variables, integer x equals 50, integer 5 equals 40, and I have one more integer which is the result. Okay. Now I have three integers, x5 and result. But what is going to be the result? Is it going to be x plus y or x minus y or x into y or x by y? What? That needs to be defined in the method, right? So these are just three variables which cannot do anything on their own. What needs to be done needs to be defined in method. So this is how you define method. It's a method add. In add method you say result equals x plus sorry x plus y return result. Okay. Method multiply multiply you said x into y, and you can define one more x minus y. Okay. X multiply. So what are we doing? We have defined four different methods. Okay, variables are same, but depending on the method that you call, that action is going to happen. Make sense? If I call add, the result I will get is x plus y. If I call multiply, the result that I will get is x into y. If I call subtract, the result that I will get is x minus y.
Gee, the syntax is pretty much similar to how do we write in Java, right?
Very
The
similar,
methods.
very similar to Java. Yes.
Do we also declare like public void
Yes.
mains?
Yeah, we
Okay.
declare that also. Yeah. So clear. So that's what the job of a method is, to define what exactly needs to be done with the variable. Clear? And then based on that, it basically returns whatever it has to return, or does whatever it has to do. Clear? Okay. Now, once we understand this entire thing, the next thing that we have to understand is that microphones muted, please. Okay. The next thing that we have to understand is,
Hello.
hello, yeah, Nitya.
We
Yeah, yeah.
we need to write the word method every time, or
Uh,
we just write add and open and close bracket.
No, we'll not write this keyword method. This is just for you to give, just to give you an idea on how or what
Okay.
exactly a method is. Right? The syntax of our programming language is going to be slightly different from this. Right? But here I just want you to understand what exactly a method does. Right? The keywords which we are going to use can be different. Okay. Microphones mute, please. Okay. Now, all these variables and methods, which are on all the methods which are using the same similar variables, these need to be written in a certain place. There has to be, some boundary which includes all these things. So all this will be included in a class. So you will start a class here. It's a class called max. So class is basically your collection of variables and methods, which can be used for the same functionalities. So there's a class called maths, and that class you have the variables, and then you have methods. Okay. So all the methods which are used for a particular functionality can be put in a class. So this is how it is written actually. Create a class, inside the class you define your variables and you define the methods. Whenever you have to call the method, you have to first of all reference to the class and give reference of the class and then call the method from the class. Make sense? So class is like a folder. Inside that folder you have different files. The same way inside the class you have different methods. Clear? Now, just for you to understand this a little better, let us now compare it with our standard controllers that we have been using all these days. We have been working with a standard controller, right? Now, in the standard controller, basically, what happens is, uh, in the standard controller, basically what happens, you have we define the account as a standard controller or contact as a standard controller, right? So let's compare this to what we have done. When you say standard controller equals account, or contact or opportunity, you know what exactly account is? This is a class. This is a class. We said we are actually accessing that logic or the set of instructions. So this is a class which is written in the backend. Okay. And inside this class, when you access some functions like we have done save the other day, we did quick save. These are all methods inside. Okay. So instructions are written that if save method is called, then do this. So class is referenced. These methods are inside it. Now, the moment you use the save method, it performs a certain functionality. When you call a quick save, it performs some other functionality. Why? Because these are defined as methods. When you say account dot name, it shows you the name of the account. This is also method defined inside it. Got it? So all these days you have been accessing the class, but you have not seen the class. Now with a custom controller, we are going to create our own class. We are going to write our own methods and use it. Okay. So the class method variable concept is clear. The three things which we are going to deal with: variable, method, and class. And using that, we are going to create our custom controllers. Clear? Let me know if anyone has any doubt, any difficulty here.
In this variables, right, Jeet, do we have anything as such like the global variables, the environment variables?
Yes, we have.
Okay. And we're going to discuss that later, right?
Global variables, see, one is